For Lucy Clearwater, music is a way to connect to people of different cultures and build community with the artist around you. Known for her Laurel Canyon style music gatherings and infectious house show performances, Clearwater is a breath of fresh air in the singer-songwriter community. Since her debut EP in 2020, she has brought a maturity and emotional responsibility to the indie scene that far exceeds her years. Clearwater is also much more than a singer-songwriter. Back in 2023, she taught herself German and released a German language EP written and produced herself called Augenlieder. Since then, Clearwater has toured Europe as well as the United States and gained a strong global following. Just last year, she gave her excited and grateful fans her latest country-tinged EP, April, to rave reviews. With these diaristic and delicate roots-based songs, Clearwater has stepped deeper into the music of her upbringing, creating a sound that is more aligned with her full artistic identity. The only thing missing from her incredible career this far has been the highly anticipated debut album. Scheduled to come out sometime in 2025, Clearwater's debut album is high on her supporters' minds since she has opened up a Kickstarter campaign to help fund its development and promotion. Like a lot of you listening, I too cannot wait to hear what Clearwater has in store. And if her past music is any indicator, it's going to be timeless tunes we'll be sharing with our children. It was a privilege to speak with Clearwater, and I can't wait for you to hear all the great things we discussed. In our talk, we dive deep into her musical upbringing, the trips to Europe that motivated her to learn German, her current reflections on her body of work, the well-known Cookie Factory, potential titles for the new album, and so much more. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to the If Ever Listening podcast. I'm your host, Stanley C., and today we have a very special guest from Los Angeles, California, the one, the only Lucy Clearwater. Lucy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
I want to start with kind of what's happening in the world right now for you and just check in and see how you've been in the past couple weeks as a LA resident.
Yeah, oh man, it's been pretty wild. Yeah, I think it's just I feel like the last couple of years have just been nonstop craziness. We just keep getting hit, and this is just another one of those. And with natural disasters, like you always hear about them happening other places, and it feels so far away until it's happening like right in front of you. I'm really fortunate to live in a part of town where I wasn't too heavily affected by the fires, but I was a bit freaked out by the potential of like, I do live pretty close to Griffith Park, the big mountain, and if that had a fire, then my place would definitely be in danger. So I did pack up and leave town to kind of get out of the way and get out of the bad air quality. So it's been a pretty just unexpected bit of time, but I'm mostly just really grateful um, that I'm okay and that my place is fine. And it's been really hard just seeing a lot of friends who actually lost everything. Um, but it's been really beautiful also to see how the community of LA is coming together to support each other. And that's been really like the silver lining of it all is seeing the community efforts and how strong this city really is and how good the people are that live here. So.
Yeah. No, that's really good to hear. I'm glad you didn't lose anything, but of course we're sorry about friends and family who did. We have some folks actually that have been on this podcast who've lost some stuff in the fire. So any sending if there's any place where we should look to kind of donate or any place that we should prioritize in terms of support, we're happy to
Yeah.
support it.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like GoFundMe's up for a lot of people who lost their homes. And I think there's a couple spreadsheets that have like a collection of a whole bunch of them. So you can find that as well.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about the beginning. So where it all started. You're not from LA as far as I know. The funny line I see everywhere whenever I look you up is born in a bathtub in a cookie factory. And I'm like, how does that story even happen? What does that even mean? So take us back kind of maybe as much as you can about that. Obviously you don't know, but maybe what stories you heard and and what was it like growing up, I believe in the Bay Area? Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. You did your homework. Very nice. Yeah, so I was born in a bathtub in a cookie factory, which was in like near Oakland, California. And my dad was working at this cookie factory, and that's where my mom decided she wanted to have a baby. So we did a home birth, and I was born into the water, into a bathtub, uh, and I love cookies. So but yeah, I grew up in the Bay and moved to Los Angeles when I was 18. Didn't go to college, just kind of decided to jump right into the music industry. And uh, yeah, that's all I've ever done. I moved down here and I started playing shows and gigging and singing backup. We're playing violin with other artists,
Hmm.
which got me into venues and opened up a lot of doors for me to then kind of pave the way for my own artist project. So I feel like I really came up through accompanying other people and getting experience playing in other people's bands. Uh, and then yeah, and then just started playing shows, and that's all I've ever done.
I
And
love
now I'm
that.
20. So
Well, it sounds very quick and it sounds very easy, but I know it most likely wasn't for you. I'm curious actually where did the inspiration to make songs yourself come from? Because a lot of us listen to music, but not very few people actually take the time to make their own music or even write songs. So when did what around what age did you start making music?
that's a great question. Well, my dad would always play guitar around the house when I was little, and he was always just really like fun and goofy with making up little songs. And so it was one of our little bonding activities was that he would play acoustic guitar and I would just make up words on the fly, just kind of freestyle little songs about like ice cream or whatever it was that little 4-year-old Lucy was dreaming about. And I actually have some of those recordings still, which is pretty hilarious. My voice was really raspy and cute. And um, yeah, so I guess it just started there. And then I got a guitar when I was 8 years old and started playing music with my friends. And we would actually write musicals. So some of my first songwriting was like musical theater style stuff or like funny, jokey songs. And then once I fell in love for the first time when I was like 16, I started writing songs about that emotional experience. And that's when I started writing like singer-songwriter, folk music and kind of found my the beginnings of what turned into my current sound.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so lots of songs about love and heartbreak, and that was it.
Fantastic. And we'll get into kind of the subject of your music because I do think it's very interesting and your sound because it's consistent, but there is a shift, I think, over time with you. But okay, so I want to kind of get us there chronologically. We're in the Bay, you're 16, you fell in love. Presumably you might have fell out of love or the heartbreak. You're making music. There's a music scene in Oakland or near Oakland in the Bay. Why LA from there at 18?
I think I just was dreaming really, really big. I've always dreamed really big. And so I knew I was going to move out of the town I grew up in. I grew up in like a small suburb outside of Oakland and it felt like a really small town, really small bubble. And so when I was thinking about where to move to, it was sort of between LA or Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of like the songwriting hubs
Hmm.
for what I'm looking for. And I went on a trip. I visited Nashville, checked it out, and I really liked it, but I had a hard time feeling like very landlocked. I think as someone who was born in California, my heart needs the ocean.
Hmm.
So LA just felt like the right place, and it was close enough to still be able to go see my parents and visit home. So yeah, I mean, I was trying to convince my folks to move to LA when I was like 12. I knew I was going to do songwriting for a young age and was like, guys, we should move to LA. And they considered it for a moment. We actually had some conversations about it and in the end decided to stay. And then as soon as I finished high school, I was like, LA, I'm coming.
It takes a lot of guts and we're better off as music listeners for it because once you start releasing music, I think it gets really interesting. Um, so let's get right before Feel Again, um, where you as you were kind of describing before, you're working with other artists, you're supporting other artists, writing. Well, how are you starting to make these connections? When you moved to LA, do you know anybody initially, or is it all kind of organic growth in the beginning?
I know anybody, but I moved into this artist, like a creative artist house, which had like 30 people living in one house.
No.
And it was pretty crazy. It was sort of, I think of it as the equivalent of what would have been my college experience, like dorm life, except it was a house that was a creative house that you had to like apply for. So it was musicians and actors and photographers and models and comedians and dancers and just all creative people. And the age range was like 18 to 34 or something. So I was the baby moving into the house, and everyone else living there was a bit more experienced or had just had more had lived a little bit more life than me. So it was kind of a fast track to getting connected and getting my footing in a new city, and then meeting a lot of really talented musicians that I got to collaborate with and learn from. And yeah, a couple of those people at that house in particular, um, yeah, like just opened a lot of doors for me and invited me to play with them at their shows and introduced me to all the cool venues in LA. And so I was really, really fortunate. I think a lot of people don't have that experience moving to a new city, but I really just had this like kind of foundation of a big group of friends immediately upon moving to LA.
That's
So
brilliant.
yeah,
Oh,
I would recommend everybody's like look moving to a new city, look for things like that
hmm.
because they exist in lots of big cities. Just look for like different kind of like communal housing or like artist living spaces, and yeah, that was a really great experience.
A lot of the listeners for if ever you're listening are musicians, early stage musicians. So this is really good advice, and it's not something we've heard before with our guests. So thank you for that. And it sounds like you've kept that communal, but we're gonna get there as well about kind of it sounds like you hit though like these house parties with other songwriters and musicians, and I've heard people talk about it in terms of similar to Laurel Canyon era, Southern California. So it's cool that
I just love
I didn't know you had this that beginning of living in a music community type of space.
totally. Yeah, yeah, it's I just really I love doing music with people. That's really like if it was just a totally solo thing, I don't know that it's what I would be doing. Like I love the music part, but I think I equally love the connection that it brings, if not more. So I
Mhm.
think that's why I've always gravitated towards having my creativity be yeah, in communal spaces.
That's beautiful. Now, we we get to the Feel Again EP. Now we're in 2020. Are the people you make this EP the people from your living community? Are they people kind of you met after? And how do you look back
Uh,
on that album?
ah, well, yeah, I think it was I made it with people that I met probably as a sort of result of that initial community that I became part of. So yeah, like that living space was an opportunity to meet a whole bunch of people. And then I don't know how many steps removed it was, but you meet one person who introduces you to someone else, who introduces you to someone else, and eventually I found the producer that I wanted to work with, and Justin Glasgow, and he was such a fantastic person to work with, and it was my first time really truly working with a producer and making this EP, and he brought a lot of wonderful musicians in to work with me on it. So I got to work with Mason Stoops and Jacob Jeffries and a lot of people who have yeah like remained important figures in my life today. And uh, I look back on that EP with a lot of fondness. I think I don't know. Most artists look back on their early work with it like it feels young to me. Like it feels sweet and young. I'm really proud of myself for having made it. But I also see the ways in which my sound has changed since then. And it was a big opportunity to explore and learn and try things out and get the experience of working with professionals for the first time. And yeah, I haven't listened to it actually in years. So I'm curious how I would feel if I were to go back and listen to some of those songs now. Maybe I should try it out. I feel like that would be a good exercise for me to just kind of revisit it and see what I'm at.
Highly recommend for the listener. It's a great EP. I did listen to it recently in 2025. My favorite tune right now is Distracted from it, so I thought that was a really special tune. Um, and
Yeah, that's the first song I wrote in an alternative tuning on my guitar. I like tried out writing in open D, or it was open D and then with a little change from that too. But yeah, that's a fun one.
I love that. Okay. Yeah, I wrote like sounds very self-assured. There's a beautiful clarity in your voice. The lyrics cut straight. It's acoustic, stripped down, but it's guitar focused, and the way she kind of gets control of all of that, it doesn't feel very laid back. It feels very intentional. Um,
Thanks.
and for a first EP, I was impressed. So I'm glad that you started there, but we have a lot of projects that happened after that. But it takes years. There's 3 years in between this EP and the next EP. So I kind of actually want to talk about what your life was like in between those
Yeah. Um, Gosh, what did I do in between?
years.
Well, you know what? I think the Feel Again EP came out like in May or so, 2020, I
Hmm.
want to say.
Yep.
So the pandemic hit
True.
in March,
Yep.
and I was already set on track. I had this release schedule already planned out to put out that EP, and COVID hit. And then I realized, well, it's bad timing, but I still have to put out this project. So,
Mm,
um, and and then, you know, those years feel like they kind of just flew by. They felt like the longest years that have ever happened. And it's like, where did that time go? You
yeah.
know, one day you're 21, you wake up and you're 24.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy. So yeah, during the pandemic, well, I guess I did a lot of weird things. I hosted an online music festival called Comfy Music Fest, in which I brought a bunch of guest artists on to like joined Instagram lives,
Hmm.
and I had really incredible special guests. It was a cool time because since everybody was in the same situation, stuck at home, a lot of larger artists were very accessible to me as a newcomer and up and coming artist. I could DM artists that I was a big fan of and be like, hey, I'm hosting this festival. Do you want to do an Instagram live with me? And then all those people were also just sitting at home without much to do. So there was a much higher likelihood that they would respond and be like, yeah, I'm down. So I had Josh Radner and I had Fed Ben Shemsi and uh, gosh, like just a whole bunch of artists that I have really been admiring.
Mhm.
And that was a really great moment also for my social platforms. It really increased the traffic on my page. And then I got really into like making all these videos and posting all the time. And I did a couple different Instagram series. I did one called On Wednesdays We Walk, where I would go out into nature, go on a hike and film it, and then do a voiceover talking about whatever I was thinking about that day.
Love that.
And I did another series where I covered songs by close friends of mine, and that was really fun. So I don't know, I kept myself busy. And then the main thing that I did, I think, over COVID was that I started learning German.
Yeah.
And I decided, okay, I've got all this time, I should learn a language. And when I was trying to pick which language should I learn, um, I German was just the one that felt right for some reason. There's not really much sense to it,
Yeah.
other than there had been a lot of random, like serendipitous moments, or it felt. I'm not one who totally subscribes to all this like signs from the universe stuff, but it was so much of that that I was like, I can't ignore this.
Yeah.
There's like every license plate I see it says something on in German on it, or the back of a menu said some had like a German poem on it, or and eventually I was like, I can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
So every day I would practice German on Duolingo for like an hour every morning. That really got me through. the lockdowns, and then I started writing songs in German, which led me to create my German EP.
That's so freaking cool. Okay. I I was aware of the German. I wasn't aware of the inspiration, so that's really cool how we naturally went into the inspiration for Augen. I don't want to
Augen, yeah, yeah,
Augenlieder.
Augenlieder. It means um, well, it's kind of a play on words that I accidentally stumbled into. So Augenlied is eyelid, and Lieder is songs. And
Ooh.
so put them together and you try to make the plural of Augenlid, like the plural of eyelid to say eyelids,
Hmm.
it's almost eye songs, Augenlider. So it kind of works as like a funny play on words. But it's also like coming from yeah, like a not from a like native German like perspective. So I don't know if a German person would have like if that would make sense to them naturally, but everybody that I've shown it to is like, "Oh, I get it," but it's coming from like a funny way of thinking about play on words, I guess, maybe a more English like version of that. So I don't know.
That's incredible. No, it's not because it's not just German. It's like clever German, which is, I think of how your songwriting kind of gets more intricate and more complicated over time. It's like you start becoming more clever. And I that's the first before we started this podcast, I was telling Lucy how "What's Mine" was the song that I introduced me to her, and it's a very clever song. It's a very like witty song. And it's a thought-provoking song. And Augenlieder is a very thought-provoking and witty. So there is this kind of this cleverness, this depth of songwriting that it starts to become very natural in your songwriting. I love 2023 because we have these two EPs, Casual and Augenlieder. How did you create them? Did you create them around the same time? Kind of what was the process for you while you were making them?
Yeah, I want to say, gosh, which one came first? I think I think casual came first, but I could be wrong.
I think so.
Um, yeah, I think casual came first. So I had gone through a breakup right before 2020. And so during the pandemic, like in 2020 was also a lot of like processing and grieving that relationship. And um, that for me comes out in songwriting. That's how I process a lot of things. So I wrote a whole bunch of these kind of heartbreaky songs and then songs about my next experiences of like trying to get back into opening my heart after being hurt uh and then yeah a casual the song casual which ended up being the title of that EP kind of came from that space of like trying to date in LA and how this is such a career driven city and how I was feeling very career driven and the pull between wanting to commit to a relationship and wanting to commit to my me time and my independence and my focus on my career. So a lot of those songs kind of came out of that space. And it was my first time producing my own music. So that was another big thing that came out of those years. After the Feel Again EP, I I just decided since I'm at home and I have a lot of time on my hands, I may as well learn how to record myself and produce my own music. And that was my first attempt at doing so, and it was so fun, and I learned a lot, and yeah, I fell in love with production, and uh, and then produced the German EP as well. So yeah, I think it was first the casual EP, and then came the German songs.
Mm.
Uh,
And
and
for
I
the German, sorry, keep
sorry,
going.
I was gonna say I feel like you can kind of hear the difference in production from the
Yeah.
casual EP to Augenlieder.
Oh yeah.
It can hear the progression of like how it gets a bit more intricate as you get into the German EP because I think I had gotten a bit more experience, learned how to like do my mic placement a little bit better, and how to add more interesting sounds and play with different plugins. So uh, yeah,
I love that. And that one thing I did right, especially for like April, even Ogden Leader, it's like the voice and the production feels more enclosed, whereas like feel again and casual. It felt like you were kind of like away from the mic, or it was like more nature sounds were around you, which kind of was a cool effect, but it also might have just been production at that time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, actually, during the Augenlieder EP, I my dad has a little cabin up in Northern California, and I went and I stayed there for about 2 months, and I brought my small recording rig up there, and I just recorded the whole EP up there in the woods, totally isolated from everybody. And a lot of times it would be raining and you could hear the rain on the roof. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to capture it anyways.
Mhm.
So record while the rain was like pounding on the top of the cabin, or I would go out on these hikes every day and sometimes just record some nature sounds or record the creek. And I actually put those sounds into the EP a little bit. So if you listen closely, you can hear, especially on the song Antworten. I
Mhm.
think it's the third song on the EP. That one, it's a song all about nature. And the lyrics, though it's in German, but the lyrics are basically saying, um, like there's so much that I could learn from different aspects of nature. So for example, like um, a tree knows how to like a tree knows how to let go of its leaves when it's time for them to fall,
Mhm.
and because it knows that they're going to come back the next year. And the ocean is like full of so many secrets, and it can be playful, but it can also be deep at the same time. And it is able to hold both of those at once. And um, so I then the lines at the end of each verse is basically, I think I could learn something from the trees, or I think I could learn something from the ocean, or so that one's full of nature sounds in it.
For the listener, Augenlieder might be her most well-written EP. I was like Google translating some of the songs. I'm blanking on the names, but it was about like your dad telling you about like thinking about yourself more and like creating your own worlds behind your eyes, behind your eyelids, and I was like, fuck,
Yeah.
that's deep. That's so deep. And so like the nature song like this, it's so good. So freaking good.
Thank you. Yeah, you can definitely hear the progression of like also just my I think I've just been growing up. That's part of it too, is like I just have been living more life each year, and then that's reflected in the songs naturally. But when I was first writing, it was just like all about young love and like early experiences. And then I started to get interested in writing about other topics and writing
Mhm.
about the environment, or writing about grief, or writing about family, like just expanding outside of the love song world and try to get into some other topics that felt really deep to me.
Phenomenal. And don't get me wrong, love the love songs, or I should say love the breakup songs. Those I feel like are still your strong suit. You're still great, I should say there. I think at least is right now my this past week, that's what I've been playing the most from
Oof, that one's heavy. That one is sad.
I
You
know,
got
I
some
like
dark
sad songs.
taste. The first line is, "At least we didn't share an apartment. At least we didn't have any children."
Yep. Beautiful. I love that stuff. Love that stuff. I'm like, fuck yeah. Um, but I just, the way your voice complements those lyrics, it's very, very sad, but beautifully sad and real. And I think that's the thing that kind of stood out when I was starting to listen to you. You just feel like a real person. What the lines aren't platitudes. The lines aren't fake. The lines are very like honest and I could relate to that as a person that's gone through similar stuff. So we get to the April EP. But let's stop before we get to the April EP. You've been touring in 2024. And I actually have a pre-written question. I've been doing a lot of, I'm not even looking at my questions at this point. But one of the ones I did write down was about the European audience for you versus the American audience for you, because I know like as now a German singer, you've sung, I should say, a singer who sings in German. Sometimes you have a German base, I assume. You've toured in Europe a couple times. You have toured in the United States. So how has that been for you, and how are the audiences different?
Yeah, that's a great question. Man, I love the audiences in Germany. they're so, maybe it's because of the like slight language barrier, but they're like, or it's a cultural thing, but they're so attentive.
Mm.
They're the most respectful and attentive audiences I've ever experienced. I feel their attention and how much they're like eagerly wanting to understand what I'm saying. And as a result, the rooms end up being like very quiet and very, which is exactly what is the right thing for my style of music, for like a listening audience for really soft, intimate music. So I love playing in Germany. When I first started playing shows over there, at first I didn't really understand it because I was like, are they not into this?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
are they just they hate my music? Because often you song and then there's even like a pause before everyone starts clapping.
Wow. Oh, I know that.
Um, Yeah, but then it started to dawn on me like, oh, they're just so respectful and so interested, and so I love playing over there. Also love touring in the U.S.
Hmm.
Um, as far as touring goes, like the routes, touring in Europe is easier for the routing because all the cities are a bit closer together, or you can take trains. And in the US, the distances can be really long. I mean, even just between LA and San Francisco, that's like a 6 hour drive. So that can be a bit more of a challenge, but uh, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to kind of compare the audiences. I'm just grateful anytime there's people in the room listening to my music.
No, that's as a disclaimer, I have not seen Lucy live, but I will. Whenever you're in the area, tri-state area, I will 100% see you because I do I want to see how people experience your music, and it is so intimate, it's so stripped down. But it feels also so personal. So I want to see like how does an American audience adapt versus because the Europeans I feel like are more equipped for that type of thing. Americans like to like party and do stuff, so I don't know.
Well, it's been amazing so far. All the touring I've done in the US, people are just so sweet, and there've been some really, really magical moments. I love doing like a seated show. I
Mhm.
think that's one way to make it work really nicely for me is like also small intimate venues or even living room concerts are some of my favorite ways to share my music because I really get to connect with the people there.
Mhm.
So I love to do house concerts. If anybody's ever interested in hosting a house show, just hit me up because it's one of my favorite things to do. I'll come play in your living room.
Jersey residents, you heard her, so I can attend. Um, I love that. Fantastic. And so as you're touring in 2024, you release an EP, the April EP, a fantastic kind of new, I call it like kind of a new era in your sound and your music. It feels very, now you're not just in the singer-songwriter kind of folks camp. There's some Americana, there's some country. There's a little bit of a
Yeah.
twang to it. There's some pedal steels I'm hearing. I'm like, all right, Lucy, I was not expecting this turn, and I'm digging it. So tell me about kind of what inspired this new direction sonically, and how did you find yourself singing and writing in these new soundscapes?
Yeah, I think it actually ties back to the foundations of my love for songwriting and everything actually comes from a lot of the Americana and folk of like the 60s and 70s. So that's what I grew up listening to, thanks to mom and dad who had great taste in music. Um, and yeah, I think in when I was making my first couple EPs, um, I was a lot of the inspiration I was pulling from was the music scene that I was involved in LA, which I love. And it was also like the influence of a lot of my friends in my community rubbing off on me,
Mm.
which I love, but it definitely put me more into that like singer-songwriter genre. And as I started to kind of take a step back and really think about, okay, what kind of music is really at my core,
Mm.
um, that pulled back towards my initial influences. So, I mean, I started listening a lot more to all the oldies that I grew up on, which was a lot of like James Taylor, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young,
Mhm.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Nice.
Um, and then I got really into um, a couple like artists that I'm surprised that I wasn't listening to when I was younger, but like Towns Van Zandt
Mhm.
and John Prine. and all that. So I think that's probably where some of that more, a little bit more of that twang kind of comes from.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it, and that made me fall back in love with guitar as well, and get interested in learning more fingerstyle
Mhm.
patterns, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's where that came from. But it really does feel, I think heading more in that Americana folk direction is, it feels the most aligned with where my soul sits in music. I really loved my past projects, but I was also just exploring things and trying to find what I liked, and landing in this realm just like settles my nervous system, which is a sign to me that I'm doing the right thing. I'm like, ah, that feels natural. This feels right. It doesn't feel like I'm forcing something or trying to sound a certain way. It's just I'm creating a space and allowing the sound that's at my core to come out. So yeah, it feels really good.
That's phenomenal to hear, and it great to hear because you sound so aligned. It's beautiful to hear that you're so aligned because you sound so comfortable on these types of songs, and that leads me to my next question about the album. Um, as as Lucy fans uh, enter this podcast, as they may hear, if they hear, okay, she has a new interview out, I'm sure they're gonna wonder what's the scoop on the new album. Kind of for background, Lucy is raising funds to fund this album, and um, it's still happening as this podcast is out. And I just want to commend you for that because I know the journey for independent artists, a lot of people on this podcast are independent artists. It's extremely expensive to make an album, and I just want to commend you for the work that you're doing to do that. But for the music part of it, how is the music part coming along? Um, are we getting musically more of this country, alternative Americana sound? And how are you feeling about a release date and all the things?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited for this album. I've been dreaming of making a debut album for like as long as I can possibly remember. And it's finally happening. It's been a long road to get here. And I'm really happy that I took the time to work on making all these other projects and EPs leading up to this point to kind of just learn more until I reached a point where I felt like ready for this moment. And yeah, I'm excited because I'm working with one of my all-time favorite producers, Tyler Chester. He's worked on so much of my favorite music. And we met a while back. We just kind of run in a lot of similar circles. We started running into each other at a couple shows of different mutual friends of ours. And yeah, and then I approached him and asked if he would be down to produce my album. And we started off with trying out one song together to kind of see how that relationship would work and how it would feel. So we recorded um, a song called Whatever It Is, which is out already. And that day in the studio was like hands down the best recording experience I've had to date. It was just so magical and so special. His workflow and the way that he approaches capturing the magic of a song felt really aligned with what I want. And it was so much about capturing the feeling of the song and not obsessing over the perfectionism of it. So we recorded live to tape. We brought in some amazing LA session musicians and just played it live. And I had never done that before. I'm usually such a perfectionist, especially when it comes to my vocal. I always thought like, oh, I could never do a live vocal and feel good enough about it to put it out.
Yeah.
But because of the way he set up the environment and everything, it just went so well. So after that experience, I was like, gosh, I have to make my album with you. We have to do this. And yeah, so you are definitely going to hear a lot more of that kind of folky Americana direction in this album. I went to a folk festival last May, and the Kerrville Folk Festival in Texas. And as soon as I got home from that festival, I just wrote like a huge batch of like very lyric focused folky tunes, including the "What's Mine Isn't Really Mine" song, which was the reason why you found my music. So that song came as a result of attending that folk festival, where, gosh, it was just an amazing time. I got to sit under the stars and play songs with Adrian Lanker and Buck Meek and a whole bunch of my favorite artists. It was just magical. And we all camped out and would stay up playing songs around the campfire every night. And that was just an absolute dream come true for me and so inspiring to the point where when I got home, all these songs just kind of like burst out of my system.
Mm.
So a lot of those songs are going to be on the album, as well as a couple older tunes that I have revisited and then edited and reworked a little bit to make them fit with my current style a little bit more.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, we're bringing in some really amazing artists to contribute to the album. We've already started recording, so we're in the middle of that process. And um, I had Madison Cunningham come in and sing a bit, and just had Kenneth Pattingale from the Milk Carton Kids
Mhm.
join on a tune. We had Sean Watkins from Nickel Creek and Watkins Family Hour. So yeah, it's just going to be this big, beautiful, collaborative effort of like, yeah, just big, big, fun, collaborative family vibe, which is really like again tying back to the things that I love with community and music and tapping into that core of collaboration. So uh,
One of
yeah.
the most anticipated albums for this podcast of the year. This is a 2025 release, I presume, or may
Yeah, so we're aiming for
yeah,
late
yeah.
2025.
Hmm.
I'll be putting up some singles leading up to that.
Got it.
So hopefully we'll be hearing some of this music starting ideally in the summer.
Yeah.
I don't want to make any like hard promises, but that's
Mhm.
what I'm really hoping to do. It's also an independent release. So that means I'm doing this without a label. And so yeah, it's going to be a journey of figuring out how I want to put out these songs and the timeline. It's all kind of flexible at the moment, so we'll see what happens.
I'm so excited for you. This is going to be it's already a beautiful moment for your career, but I just want to like have you sit in that this year, this moment. This is a really cool moment, I think, for your career. And um, I'm very, very excited to listen to it. I know it's going to be phenomenal because you're phenomenal. And my last question regarding the album, of course, do we have a title?
My goodness, I don't have a title yet. I need to figure that part out. I think so. Part of the reason why I don't have a title yet is as we're going through the recording process,
Mhm.
we've left some wiggle room for new songs to enter the picture. So the track list is still a bit malleable at this point. I came to Tyler with about 32 or 33 songs, being like, hey, here's a whole bunch of songs. Let's like pick which ones are going to be on the project. We narrowed it down to about 14 or so, and then picked like our top ones that we knew were definite songs for the album. We started tracking those and we're making the recording process like spread out over like a big chunk of time, which is allowing me we'll do like 3 days in the studio and then we'll take a break for a couple weeks and then do another few days and then take a break. And in those breaks I've been feeling really inspired and excited, so I've been writing new material, and sometimes those songs come in and like bump a different track off of the album. So which is a fun process. I think it keeps it feeling alive, it keeps it fresh while we're recording. But as a result, the whole picture of what the final album is going to look like is still kind of up in the air.
Mm.
So that's what's kind of, yeah, making it hard to pick a title because I don't know exactly what the final product is going to look like yet. Um, I have been considering like a lot of my favorite artists, especially the older artists from the 60s and 70s, like a lot of debut albums are self-titled.
Yes.
So
Yes.
not done so much anymore. Today, that's not so popular. People usually have like some cool vibey name for their album.
Hmm.
You don't see self-titled albums, but if I'm really pulling inspiration from that era, it kind of would lend itself towards like I could go self-titled,
Oh yeah.
but who knows? I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I'm here for all the things. So if anybody wants to DM me on Instagram and tell me what you think my album should be called, I'm all ears. Maybe I'll make a big spreadsheet of all the name suggestions and then post them all. So yeah, DM me on Instagram. It's at Lucy Clearwater. Just shoot me a message.
I will publicly right now make my suggestion. What's
Yours.
mine? what's mine?
What's my, oh, that's actually really cool.
And it could be a kind of a play on like your career, like this is you're
Oh,
about to take what it's about to be yours, like what's mine. As well
wow.
as the deeper meaning of what the song is actually about, which is like we don't
Yeah.
own that much in the world. So it's important to learn how to let go of things. So, but I just love the song
Wow.
so much.
Yeah. Throwing it in the hat. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Yes. I will take all credit. No, I'm kidding. Please, please, please name it whatever you like. It's a great. I love the self-titled idea as well. I think that would be really, really cool, and it would get your name out there. Like it kind of serves two purposes because they
Yeah,
have to say your name twice.
totally. Lucy Clearwater by Lucy Clearwater.
Exactly. Yeah. Self-titled. Okay. So we are done with my artist specific questions. So those are all of my questions for you specifically. Now we're getting into the if ever you're listening questions. So at the end of all of my conversations, we have these four questions that I ask all artists, generally the same question. They little edits here and there. For you, I do have small edits, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. They're kind of
Ooh,
fun.
let's go. Bring it
They're
on.
fun questions. Yeah, they're relaxed. You don't have to think too deep. Actually, you do kind of have to think deep, but fun deep. So the first one is, what are you listening to these days? Maybe what are some German songs you are listening to? That's my special question for you.
Ooh. Okay, what am I listening to these days? Lots of Adrian Lanker, always lots of Gregory Alan Isakov,
Yes.
um, lots of the oldies, like I mentioned before, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joni, of course.
Mhm.
Um,
Um,
I love Eva Cassidy. That's one of my biggest vocal inspirations.
yeah.
Laura Marling is a big favorite at the moment. And then, gosh, I know I'm missing so many, but that's the ones that came to mind in this exact moment. German songs, I have a playlist that I made of a lot of German music that I used to listen to as a way to help myself learn the language.
Ooh,
I can share that. I'll put it in my Instagram. I'll put it on a story so you guys can check that out. Um, or maybe link it to my Spotify. Yeah. But there's so much interesting and cool German music out there. One of my favorites is Sky Moritz Kramer, and he's also got a band called Die Höchste Eisenbahn. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it quite right, but they're very cool. That's some of my favorite music. And it's kind of endless. I mean, there's so much to discover if you dive into the German music world.
I love it. No, that's great. That's a great picks. The next question is about your music. So, what song of yours do you find to be the most underrated or underappreciated, and why?
Ooh, underrated, underappreciated. Let's see. Um, hmm. I guess I really like, I mean, my song Are You Okay is one of my favorite songs I've ever written, though I don't know that it's super underrated. People tend to like that one.
Yeah.
Um,
I have it written down as one of my favorite Lucy Clearwater
yeah,
songs. Yeah. It's
that one's one of my favorites that I've written.
a beautiful song.
Uh, maybe, uh, and there's a couple songs on the April EP that I feel like
Hmm.
uh, deserve a little more listening. I really like If That's All It Is.
Mm,
That song is probably underrated.
yes,
Uh, it's got my friend Quinn Olton playing saxophone on it, and he just absolutely crushed it. And I just think it's a sweet tune. So yeah, maybe that one.
beautiful, beautiful. My vote, my pick is At Least, and I'm just gonna live with At Least for a little bit. But no, I love those songs you picked are fantastic. April EP in general, I think it's just underappreciated. I think that's a really strong EP from 2024 that
Okay.
should
Yeah.
be on more year-end list. The next question is about, and we didn't actually talk this much about this question, which is cool because we can kind of talk about it more with this question. So it's about the music industry as you've experienced it. And the question is, if you could change anything about the music industry, like maybe if you had a magic wand or a genie that can give you one wish, what would it be and why would you change it?
Um, one thing that I want to change about the industry. Woof, that's tough. There are many things that I want to change about this industry. Can
Yeah.
I say two?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
You can,
One is that I think music creators just need to get paid more.
Mhm.
Um, that's probably the biggest one. It's so wild, the amount of effort and time and money that goes into creating music, which then gets uploaded to these big streaming platforms like Spotify and whatnot, and then uh, and then you get like penny, like not even pennies for streams, and that really needs to change. Meanwhile, CEOs and everybody that's running this thing like are just raking it in. So that's one thing. The other thing is I really dislike how everybody has to, it feels like we're all screaming into this void all the time and we're all trying to make content and post videos and like everybody's just aching for attention and asking for things and um, I wish we could get back to a place where there was more focus on like the in-person, real live connecting to music, like going to concerts. I feel like that really took a dive during the pandemic and the industry still hasn't recovered from that. So, um, yeah, I think just for people to value music for really what it's worth. People used to buy a song on iTunes for 99 cents or $1 to buy a song. And
oh, yeah.
that doesn't seem like very much to ask, you know? But somehow people can barely rationalize spending like a penny. So that's I think that's what I would like to change about the industry.
Amen. Preaching to the
Yeah.
choir. Preaching to the choir. And I'm 100% a fan of more in-person events as well. I almost want this, like if ever you're listening, eventually to be like an in-person podcast, in-person studio. People come in, have these really awesome conversations about music because I feel like music is
I
such
mean,
a deep
yeah.
thing. We should be like talking about it more, like not just clicking on it and then going to the next thing.
Yeah. And that's part of why I really appreciate what you're doing here with this kind of a podcast because it's like this is getting beyond the step of just consuming somebody's song, but
Yes.
actually getting to a point where you're learning about the life of this person and getting a little bit deeper and giving the artist a chance to be like, hey, get to know me, like this is who I am, and that connection, like creating that relationship is so important. So I think it's so wonderful that you've been putting this on, and it's just such a great. We need more of this kind of thing, and listeners who are interested in getting to know the artists more. So thanks to everybody who's been listening as well.
And our final question is about advice. So, from your career up to this point, from moving from suburb of Oakland to Los Angeles, going to Germany, coming back, going back to Germany, all around the world to tour and make these great albums and making music with Adrian Lenker and Buck and really, really you've created like your own really awesome career and a dreamlike career. At this point, from the people you've met, because you've met some really, really cool people, it could also be like a friend. What has been the best and maybe most useful advice you've been given up to this point?
Um, Best and most useful advice. I've gotten so much good advice over the years. I think um I don't know if this was necessarily like advice that was told to me by an individual. I'm sure it's been repeated many times by different people, but something that I've like learned or gleaned from my time doing this is um this just is going to sound so cliche, but it's really just about staying true to yourself.
Mm.
Like I I've realized that I don't I don't want a success that isn't based in something that feels fulfilling to me on like a deep human level. So I had a moment there when I was younger where I considered like maybe I should just write pop songs for other people, or maybe I should just like write pop songs and put them out myself and see if I can just like get a hit. And some people do that, and that is what they're passionate about. And that's great. If that's what they like and they're passionate about, then more power to it. But for me, I realized that isn't completely authentic to the reason why I do music and the kind of music that I like. And uh, yeah, I wouldn't want to write something that doesn't feel super authentic and then have it get popular and maybe have it make me a bunch of money or make it, then I could go on tour because ultimately if I get that success, then I'm gonna have to go on tour playing stuff that I don't like. And really the experience is like what you go through mentally. And it doesn't matter like if I have all this amazing glamorous stuff, if every day I'm having to play something that just doesn't like speak to me or feel right, then I just don't want it. I would rather have a more humble career doing something that feels really, really great to me. And ultimately that's what I want to do. So like I hope my music gets more and more successful. I really hope that it grows and that it can move a lot of people. But ultimately, I wouldn't trade the authenticity and the style and the kind of music that I'm writing and the lyrical content. I wouldn't trade that for some external validation or artificial um, success. I think it's really just about wanting to do what I like. And I think as a result, by creating something that's really authentic, I think that actually has more potential of gaining success than trying to take some shortcut to get there. So
Lady,
I guess that's my advice is just do you.
do you and be honest to you. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
Lucy Clearwater, thank you so much for coming to the If Ever You're Listening podcast. It's been an honor, and I'm so excited for all that you're about to do because you're a great artist, and it's more and more people are going to catch on to what you do because you're great at what you do. So please come back. Please
Thank
seek
you so
Lucy
much.
in a city near you. Where can folks actually find you? Where's the best place to find you social media wise?
Yeah, on social media, it's probably Instagram at this point. Please send me a message so that we can be friends. And like turn on notifications because the algorithm does suck. But you can reach me there. I am online a lot, so you can shoot me a message and reach me. And then you can listen to my music on all the platforms. Or if you would like to buy my music, you can do that on Bandcamp or iTunes if you feel like supporting that way. And yeah, I think that's basically it for now. I do have a mailing list on my website. So if you go to lucyclearwater.com, you can join my mailing list. That's sort of a new development. I'm just starting to build that. I'm trying to combat the issues of all our current social media algorithm stuff. So if you want to go old fashioned, you can do it that way.
You heard her. Jump over there, guys. Again, thank you so much, Lucy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.